What is up, guys? Frosty Osty 0232 here today for another Frosty Features. Today we have our final member of the new Warriors team, Gwenpool. And so, if you haven't seen a Frosty Feature before, what this is a comic book background on the toons that you use in Marvel Strike Force, with me being your humble storyteller slash historian slash comic book geek. So, with all that, let's get going. According to Scopely, Gwenpool originally lived in a universe like our own, where superheroes and supervillains were fictional characters in comic books, movies, and even animated television shows. Unable to find a job after high school and after all her friends moved away, Gwen escaped reality in comics. Through mysterious, unknown means, Gwen found herself transported to the Marvel Universe. Uninterested in being an extra in the comic book world, Gwen bought a costume and became a costumed fighter. She doesn't possess any traditional powers, but is a formidable hero, using her extensive knowledge of the Marvel Universe, fiction in general, and her medium awareness. This medium awareness allows Gwen to straddle the line between comics and reality, such as hopping between comic pages and using comic text as tools. After receiving her moniker, Gwenpool from Deadpool, Gwenpool made a name for herself as a hero, facing off against villains like Taskmaster and M.O.D.O.K, while also joining up with heroes like the Avengers and Spider-Man. I have a lot to say about this, so here we go. Gwenpool, here she is in all her glory. Her name is Gwendolyn Poole, right? We're gonna dive into how she got her name and things like that, but yes, Gwendolyn Poole. First appearance is actually in Howard the Duck, Volume 6, Number 1, 2015. There's a bit of a technicality we'll address a little bit later, but yes. So she is very much she's Deadpool-esque, obviously. She's very much kind of a joke, really fun-loving sort of character. Power slash abilities, medium control. So, on a very strictly personal level, she has no powers except for the fact that she has this comic awareness. Very similar to that of She-Hulk and Deadpool. One thing that is quite different about her than them is she can actually climb out of the comic book, which they do it on occasion. She doesn't more. But she can grab things from other panels. She can leave one comic book and go to the other. She can go back or forward in time with this. So in canon she has no powers, but she can step out of canon and do things, which makes her extremely powerful. So it's really, with her, it's all up in the air, and sometimes depending on her, and she'll acknowledge this, depending on who writes her powers aren't as strong, and sometimes they are. So it all depends. Alias is Pink Ghost. She namely goes by Gwenpool. She also tried to implement the name Pink Ghost for a short period of time, but it didn't stick. Affiliations: West Coast Avengers, very specifically, the X-Men, and Gwenhive. Gwenhive being different versions of Gwenpool that she brings together and forms a team. The X-Men, she is not a mutant, but similar to Franklin Richards, she decides that she's going to be a mutant. So in canon, she makes it to where everyone thinks she's a mutant. So she's allowed to live in Krakoa. So she's the one of the few non-mutants that get to live in the mutant society, because everyone thinks she's a mutant even though she isn't. Yeah, and then West Coast Avengers, she, you know, went out to Cali and joined the Avengers, legitimately by sort of mistake. But that's kind of par for the course, right? Background: she is from Earth TRN 565, so the only known inhabitants from this dimension. So typically in Frosty Features we stick to Earth 616. She comes to the 616 from Earth TRN 565, and so all her story actually happens in the 616. But what TRN 565 is this reality where it's essentially very similar to our reality, where it's just all of these superheroes and things are told through this Marvel medium. This gives her, because she's from here and she's read all these comic books, she knows secrets of other superheroes that other people don't know. So she knows, for example, she would know like Daredevil's secret identity that when other people might not. things like that. So she's got outside information she shouldn't have. Yeah, and the only known inhabitants from this dimension are her and her brother. And we'll talk about him in a second. Who died? Teddy. Not really. Her brother, Teddy Pool. Teddy Pool and Gwendolyn both come to Marvel 616. The description that Scopely put out was correct. No one's actually sure why. I have a really good guess, I think. Yeah, so her and Teddy come over from the 616, but they are separated. However they come over, they are separated when it happens, and each of them presumes the other dead, right? The thing about it is when Gwen gets into Gwen gets into the world, right? She views all these characters as fictional characters, so she has a very, very low. She doesn't care about anything. So she's very brutal in whatever. So her brother. So both of them, they didn't graduate high school, whatever. So her brother, he's just trying to live a normal life. He's also normal, but he can't. He's just a normal dude, right? So he has to get a job, has to pay his bills, etc. But he can't get a job because he doesn't have any papers. He has no social security number or whatever. So he ends up working for M.O.D.O.K, which is like this snake man with swords. He starts kind of doing like little henchman work for him, and in the process runs into his sister and kind of sees her from afar, so she doesn't actually know he's alive, but he recognizes it as her sister, but he's disgusted about how brutal she's becoming, how little she cares about the lives of others. So he kind of keeps his distance for a while, and we'll talk a little bit more about him a little bit later. So next is the origin of the moniker. One thing that's just blatantly wrong in the Scopely description. So the moniker Gwenpool came, so she gets into the world where there's heroes, and she sees the heroes and she gets super excited, but she doesn't want to be a background character. She doesn't want to be an extra. So she does not meet Deadpool for a while. She's Gwenpool way before she meets Deadpool, so he can't actually give her the name. That's such a weird thing they threw on there. So anyway, she's like, I'm gonna get a cool suit. So she goes and she goes to it is called Big Ronnie's Custom Battle Spandex, and she goes and sees Ronnie, and Ronnie's like, yo, you want a suit? And she's like, yes, give me the form. And she fills out her form, and her name is Gwendolyn Pool. And Ronnie, he just kind of barely glances at the form, and he says, oh, Gwenpool. He just misreads it, and he's like, well, I know who Deadpool is, so I'll just make her look like a female version of him, and makes that suit. And much to her dismay, because she actually hates Deadpool, because she knows about him. She doesn't like, her whole thing is she doesn't like all the funny, jokey comics. So her and Deadpool actually are quite opposites as far as like personality. Well, not personality, they act very similar, but their views and how they operate, they're very opposite. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Also, very interesting side point, big comic book nerd moment, but I just wanted to throw this out there. So, also with moniker, her name, this is not a version of Gwen Stacy, right? So that's a big misconception. Gwenpool is not Gwen Stacy. The way Gwenpool was made was that there was a situation. So Spider-Gwen became so popular just a few years ago in, like, the 2014, 2015 era. So Spider-Gwen becomes super popular. So what they start doing in every Marvel property is they kept doing variant covers where Gwen Stacy was that character, dressed up as that character one way or the other, and they did it over and over and over. So eventually, so Gwen Stacy. So eventually we get this comic book cover, which is from Deadpool Secret Wars #2, the Chris Bachalo variant. So this is a variant cover. So this is Gwen Stacy dressed up as Deadpool, like this variant. And so this variant cover came out, and it became so popular that people started cosplaying it. And Marvel was like, well, there's a lot of people cosplaying this character, but this character doesn't exist. It's not real. So Marvel backs up, and they're like, okay, let's actually make a character that looks like this, that is Deadpool but different, and let's run with it. So Gwenpool is based off Gwen Stacy, but is not an alternate version. She is not a variant of Gwen Stacy, and that's very important to know. Her name is Gwendolyn Pool, not Gwen Stacy. She is still blonde. She gets the short hair and the highlights and all that. So her looks are based off of Gwen Stacy, and her name definitely comes from Gwen Stacy, but this is not a different variant. This is Gwenpool. It is actually different. Cool. Moving on. So she's so totally derivative. That's funny. All right, relationships. Ted and Martha Poole are her parents, and then Ted Poole Jr. is her brother. She doesn't have much relationships outside of that. We will get to that a little bit. Notable events working for M.O.D.O.K. So, as she comes into Marvel 616. She has very little care for people's lives, whatever, so she decides she will make all her money, and she will get her reputation by being a kind of real brutal mercenary. She gets jobs from Ronnie, from Ronnie's battle suits and custom spandex. So she starts getting these things from Ronnie, and eventually she is on the hunt for a squad of Tothudans, which are like these squid. They're these squid monster dudes. They're aliens. Yeah, they're if, as you may imagine it in your head, they're walking squid people, typically blue. She's going to go kill. She's looking to kill this squad, and she gets there, and another mercenary has already done it. And she's like, well, Dip, I don't know what to do about this, so I'm gonna kill you. So she kills the mercenary that killed the squad and took all the credit. And in doing so, that mercenary was working for none other than M.O.D.O.K. So M.O.D.O.K's like, yeah, that's not cool. I'm gonna find you. So he tracks her down and is like, hey, I'm gonna kill you if you don't help me out. And she's like, yeah, I'm not into this. All the meanwhile, somehow, this person who seems totally devoid of emotion finds a friend named Cecil. Cecil becomes her hacker, who is like her guy in the chair. And M.O.D.O.K's like, I'm not joking. Check this out. I'm gonna kill Cecil. So he kills Cecil, and then Gwen's like, well, better join her. Better join M.O.D.O.K. So then she starts doing missions for M.O.D.O.K. And M.O.D.O.K, at this point, he's not necessarily working for AIM. He's made his own company called M.O.D.O.K. But instead of mechanized organism designed only for killing, it is mercenary organization dedicated only to killing, right? And he is the president. So M.O.D.O.K is the president of M.O.D.O.K, and Gwenpool is working for it. So she starts doing all these different kind of mercenary missions for M.O.D.O.K, and some of her associates are working, that she's working with, Batroc the Leaper. They teach her how to fight. So because she really is just a girl in a suit with, katanas and guns, right? And so Batroc teaches her how to fight, and, in an okay way. So eventually she realizes, I need, she has run-ins with her brother, and they kind of, there's this whole thing, and I try not to go into it because it's really confusing, but there's this whole thing about her future self becoming this big supervillain, and these heroes come back and convince her brother to try to help convince her not to become evil. So all that to say, she and her brother sort of make amends, and she starts realizing that she can treat the other comic book people as people. So one of the things she does is she sees her brother's struggles and realizes her own. She has no way to get like legitimate money, to get paid, whatever. So she seeks out my man, Dr. Strange, and is like, Dr. Strange, I'm from a different dimension, so I ain't got no paperwork. Can you give me a social security number? And Dr. Strange is like, that's probably super illegal. Yes, I can do that. So he gets her and her brother's paperwork, more or less, so that they exist properly in the Earth 616. And with that, after her papers come out, M.O.D.O.K gets them because, he's attached to the internet. He's not under a rock, and he gets their paperwork, and he looks at it, and he's like, Gwen doesn't have any powers. What am I employing? I'm gonna kill her. And so he decides to go and kill her. So he tracks her down and goes to kill, legitimately got her social security card, was like, not a superhuman, tracks her down, goes to kill her. And then Dr. Strange is like, nuh-uh, watch this. And he brings Cecil's ghost back from the dead, and Cecil's ghost and Gwenpool team up and take out M.O.D.O.K. And then she becomes the head of M.O.D.O.K. So M.O.D.O.K's gone, and she becomes the head. It's a joke, right? She becomes the head of M.O.D.O.K, the company, for a while, and then she ends up dissolving, and this whole thing. But anyway, it's fun. It's great. All the Gwenpool stories are crazy and funny. It's fun. Up next, Krakoan love triangle. So at a point, so as I said earlier, Gwenpool, she sort of decides, there's a lot of comparisons with her and Franklin Richards, which we'll circle back to as soon as we get to power level. Franklin Richards' powers manifested in such a way that it looked like he was a mutant, right? And so it suppressed itself within him and kind of developed like he was a mutant. Gwen saw that and decided that she would be a mutant too, even though she's not a mutant, but due to her being able to kind of affect the medium around her, she just made everybody convinced that she is a mutant so she can live within the mutant situation. So she's living in Krakoa, and she's noticing a lot of people are falling in love with each other. There's a lot of relationships going on, and so she's decided herself that Marvel is writing a romance series. So she, once again, not wanting to be an extra, decides that she needs to have she decided that she needs to have some sort of love storyline. So she goes out and she goes out of the comic book and she decides that she's going to be in love with the character Wither. And so Wither is very similar to Rogue. When he touches something, it decays and dies. And so her move, since back in the 90s, the relationship between Gambit and Rogue was so popular, she figured that they could do the same thing, but Wither would be Rogue and she would be Gambit. And they would have this really awesome love situation. But unbeknownst to her, when she gets back in the comic and she's actually dating Wither, as you can see here, she finds out that, oh no, Wither's there to train to learn how to use his powers, and he learned how to use them so he doesn't decay everything he touches. So that disappoints her, and she's like, well, this love story is pretty boring now, so I need another person. So she decides that Elixir is also in love with her. So Elixir is essentially this mega healer mutant who can, he can like reconstruct biological matter and stuff. Kind of the opposite of Wither, and so she decides to make the relationship more interesting by making it a love triangle. And there's a very short period of time where Wither and Elixir are kind of mad at each other, and then they realize that it's all Gwen's doing and she's just messing with them. So they're like, our friendship's too strong, peace, chick. And then she gives up and she moves away from Krakoa because of that, and she moves to New York. So in New York, she ends up running into a couple of different soups, and she runs into Julia Power, who tries to have a relationship with her, and Gwen realizes that she has no interest in having sexual relations or any kind of relations with anyone because, you know, maybe this has something to do with her still not caring about other people, or maybe that's just who she is as a person. So she comes out as asexual and aromantic because she's not interested in having any of those. She just wants to be awesome all the time, and that's all she cares about. And, you know, more power to you, Gwen. That's amazing. Okay, so those are some of the things from Gwenpool. There's a lot of stuff. She's only been around since 2015, but she's been in quite a bit, so definitely check out some of her stuff. It's a lot of fun. Up next, we have Power Level. Scopely doesn't seem to care about Power Level, but here in Frosty Features, we do. So the way this works is if you are at a multiversal Power Level, you have the ability to end not only your reality, but all realities as all people know it, all at once. Big snap, right? Big snap. Universal means that you have the power to to end one universe, hop over to another one, and maybe end that one. Little snap. Thanos snap, right? Cosmic, you are strong enough to level a planetary body with enough effort, probably taking out a solar system or a small galaxy. And nuclear means that you have power equal to that of a nuclear bomb. Your power is strong enough to level a small city or up to a planetary body in a single move, right? Super Soldier means that you are a person that is beyond the peak of human ability in every way, so you could take out something like a brick wall and maybe even up to leveling a city block. City means you are a person who is working at the city level, so you are something like the highest trained kind of secret agent or special operative, what have you. And then there's Greg. Greg's the undead Asgardian spawned by Hela in Marvel Strike Force, and with the undead Asgardian physiology and the fact that they have no brain, and for just the sake of argument and the hell of it, Greg, we're gonna call equal to that power level of a regular human. So if I have a trash bag full of stuffed animals and a lot of aggression, I theoretically could beat Greg up, right? So in the case of Gwendolyn Pool, we have this person who has no in-canon powers, but her powers exist outside of canon. But due to the fact that this is so influential, she is quite the detriment. So depending on the story and interest that is viewed by the artist and or writer, her power sort of changes. But due to that kind of all coming down to her whim, Gwen is very strongly cemented in the universal category for power levels. So Gwen can pull different versions of herself from multiple timelines. She can reach from one panel to another to grab things from the future or the past and use them as weaponry. She legitimately can end and rewrite pocket dimensions. She is one of the only characters to rewrite the Marvel 616 canon to her own whim. She was one of the only characters to actually change 616 canon. Her and Scarlet Witch are like just two very specific characters that have been able to do such a thing. She even gets pulled into a pocket dimension, which is a remake of her and Teddy get pulled into a pocket dimension that is an exact copy of her original universe, and she forgets everything that happened, and she becomes, as she's reading comics, she becomes aware again of her powers and is able to legitimately strip her and Teddy from that universe and start over. So she literally has ended universes just because she thought about it, right? So she actually is at a universal power level. That is it. That's Gwenpool. And then as we look at it, according to Scopely, this is very correct until it's very wrong. And so I had a really big problem with this because it's like, it sort of seems like Scopely, which usually it's either all the way wrong or it's kind of wrong. This is like all the way correct until it's like somebody did their research and then they ran out of time to do the research, so they just made up the rest of it. Being that from, if you, yeah, you can see it. So from here, from the beginning all the way down to right here, it's correct. And then everything after this is just wrong. The things about the West Coast Avengers, Deadpool had nothing to do with her. She runs into Deadpool later, and she hates his, like, because he's very sexual in nature. He's very kind of raunchy, and he's comedic for comedic's sake. She doesn't like that. She actually hates Deadpool quite a bit. They have no relation whatsoever other than the fact that somebody misread a form and decided that she wanted to look sort of like that. So, very kind of big things there. So, yeah, I don't know. It was an amazing description up until that end bit, and they put it in their they did a Who is Gwenpool, Marvel Strike Force posted a Who is Gwenpool video. It's like a minute and a half, and it's the same thing. It's pretty much this just read, and it's correct until it's not anymore. So nice try. I really wanted to put that they didn't even try. It's like they tried and gave up. So it's a category I don't even have, but nice try. There it is. So that is Frosty Features Gwenpool. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know your favorite Gwenpool moments in the comments. Let me know things that I got wrong or I missed. I love to hear from you. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe or share. It doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks here on YouTube. As a reminder, I stream every Sunday at this link above, starting at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, where we do Frosty Features live. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you all had a good time, and I hope you all have a fantastic week, and most importantly, y'all, stay cool.